Hello everyone and welcome to today's video, which is going to be a rotations guide. Now, because I believe in upfronting knowledge, I'm going to give you a small outline of what's to come in the video, and then you can decide if you'd like to sit along with me and enjoy, or if you'd like to leave a like, sub, and comment on the video about what you'd like to see instead. Now, of course, let's get ready, let's dive into it. So, what are we going to see in this video? What we're going to talk about is some key simple points. We're going to talk about Regieleki versus the other Regis, and about like when to go for these Regis and when to make the rotational play for the other Regi. Now we're going to look at like how to hold your pads effectively and when to look for pushes and rotational plays that can outplay your opponent and beat them in ranked. Now, of course, all of it's subjective, all of it's up to you to interpret and put into your game, so make sure your ears are open, your eyes are on, and you're ready to be in a listening mood because you're going to get a lot better just from watching. Alright guys, thank you for listening. If you like that, let's keep going. Alright, so it's pretty simple. Let's just start off with what is a rotation, right? So because this is a more of a rotations guide, a rotation is, let's just say you're in one lane, you need to retreat and go to the other lane to defend the push. That would be a rotation. You're making a movement across the map. You can do it from the side of the map, you can do it from their side of the map, etc, etc. You can do rotations from anywhere, and they're generally referring to movements around the map. Now, you can rotate as a team, so there'll be as a group of 5, you could go through the middle or whatever to the next objective, whether that's here or even in the middle. Or you can go as a solo person to hold a lane, to invade a jungle, to push out a lane as well. There's lots of different types of rotations. And the main thing is that the idea behind the rotation is to put you in a lead because you were there before your opponent could have understood that that's the play that they should make. So rotations, they ultimately come down to sort of a game read sense. The better read of the game you have, the better your rotation is going to be. So that's a good idea to think about it. So now that we know, okay, so we rotate throughout the map, and it's about game sense. It's about understanding where is my opponent going to be, what do I need to do on the map, and how do I deny it with moving around to thwart their play. So it's as simple as, for example, a jungler will walk out of the jungle and try to gank top lane. The jungler will also come top lane and it's a 3v3. Which is effectively a rotational read to nullify an advantage from the opponent. That's as simple as rotations could be. Or it could be something as complex as a Sableye. Let's just grab Sableye, he goes to invade. And then after the invade, they run to top lane to defend the push against their solo top laner. That would be a rotational read, knowing, okay, that's where a weak point is, I want to cover up the gaps. All in all, I'm basically saying rotations are mainly a defensive tool, but they can be used offensively as well. They're mainly to fill in the gaps in your iron wall. Because, of course, as you play the game, you understand we're sort of playing like a shifting wall. They want to throw a dodgeball through this wall, right? And you want to make sure that you're moving the wall in front of the dodgeball every single time. And that's a rotation, right? So every time you move, you open up another hole in the map. But that's fine, because as long as you understand what hole you're opening up, you can go and defend against it. Alright, so now that you understand that analogy and we're moving through, I'm going to give you a short rotational question so you can pause the video, think about, and then we can continue learning about rotations. So let's get rid of Sableye here. You are, okay, what's common role, guys? I think the most common role is probably central area, but let's just say you're a dojer and you've just finished your second clear. The time in the game is 8 minutes. You've just beaten down the bees. Okay, we'll make it 750. What should you do here? There are a Lapras and Umbreon in top lane, a Delphox and a Tyranitar in bot lane, and a Azumarill in the jungle, right? You were unable to take down anyone, but you're running around. You're in half health, and your jungle clear will be respawning in 20 seconds. What should you do? In this state, you have no teammates. Okay, I'll give you 3, 2, 1. Alright. So it's quite simple to me at least, but you don't actually have any ability to move in the map because right now I haven't shown you where your teammates are. And you have to consider this when you're doing rotations. The reason I put this example out here is because your teammates matter a lot in rotations. If your teammates are following you around permanently, you should probably look for more fights than anything else. If your teammates are never following you around, what can you look for? Maybe some backcaps, maybe you can group up with them to force the fights. There's all these ideas behind rotations and when to use like a good read on the game. But the reason you want to go back into your camps is because if you look at the timer, it's going to be 750. There's no point to really engage those Azumarill into the jungle because the only thing you'd be doing is giving them a chance to rotate onto you. You don't want to give them the initiative. You want to go take your jungle, become strong, and see what happens in the lanes so you can create a disadvantage to the other team. This comes down from not just junglers, but it's literally every role. You're allowed to walk into other lanes and create pressure simply by existing. And that's a large portion of what you need to do in the game Pokemon Unite. You need to go and understand that you need to run into other lanes and you need to create pressure. You need to make sure that you are trying to create positional advantages for your team wherever you go. This is as simple as making the game a 3v2. Now, how would you ask that? So it's like when the jungler would gank any lane, it's going to be a 3v2. If the other jungler comes, it's a 3v3. That's not ideal. You don't want to do that. In a perfect world, the enemy jungler doesn't exist, and it's just you continuously putting on pressure on the enemy team. And the same would exist if you roamed up from bot lane and went to top and made 4 people go top. It's the same idea. You're putting a lot of pressure into the top and you're hoping that the pressure is received less in the bottom lane. Because a lot of the time, what will happen is, they'll forget that it's one bottom and they'll just send one top. And then you understand how you beat in the rotation. Because you made the first chess move, the opponent has to follow in kind. And when they follow in kind, that time that it takes, that's how good your rotation is. The longer it takes your opponent to respond, either they are worse at rotations or your rotation was that much better. And it's as simple as, here's a good example of a really good rotation. And it's rotations is a very macro sense thing. So I'll probably go and make another video talking about macro. But if anything, let's just say the Rayquaza spawns at 2 minutes. And if the enemy team is not at Rayquaza, and let's just say you see someone greedily farming in the top lane, you could probably just start ripping it. And the amount of time it takes for them to react is a good measurement of how talented they are as a rotational, as a macro, as a game sense type of player. They should understand that at 2 minutes, they have to be looking at Rayquaza. And if they haven't done that assumption in their head, well, then they lose the game. And that's just how rotations go. They can make game-winning decisions for your team if your team is on board with what you're doing, or if the opponents cannot understand or make the correct read in the appropriate time. For example, rotations go even further from, for example, baiting into side bushes. You could have already moved from a place that you've shown them. So for example, Dodrio would be top lane, right? We'll hide in this bush. And then maybe a support will stand outside here. The enemy team's Umbreon will run up and say, okay, I can just hit him for free. Which is a common thing that happens in Pokemon Unite. Players just try to engage on each other without really thinking about flanks and engages and ambushes. And they'll start doing that. And when they use all their spells, and they think that they're going to be winning a 50-50 fight against another caliber character, the Dodrio comes out of the bush, chain stuns the opponent, and then takes him down. And then this is what is caused from the rotational play. You've shown yourself somewhere else, you reappear in another place, and you catch the enemy by surprise. This isn't because you were ambushed, in the sense that, I didn't have any idea, but you were actually out-rotated and baited. You should have paid attention to how long ago since we last saw this character, what's the likeliness of this play happening, and, okay, maybe I don't need to hit this other player for fun. This happens a lot of the time, and it can be a key advantage in games. So what I'm saying is, rotations extend a little bit more than just defending pads and reading the opposition's play. It also sets up for your own plays. So now that we know rotations are setting up for our plays, they're reading pads, defending gameplays, what are characters that are good at rotating? Now, some characters are going to be inherently better than other characters at rotating, and this is examples like, for example, Hoopa, for example, Sableye, for example, Talonflame, for example, the speedsters in category in general. These characters are all very strong at rotating around the map. They have good mobility abilities, and they run really quickly to be able to go into the other lanes and pressure. A rotational character is something that really punishes the mismovement of the enemy team. And the way you want to think about that is that if you were somewhere and it takes you only 5 seconds to get to somewhere else and they take 10 seconds, you have to add 5 seconds to the brain lag that they're going to get. I know I say brain lag, right? But it really is. They have to understand the situation, break it down in their head, and find the correct solution. And if they don't do that in the appropriate time, they will end up losing something for free. Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, but Sulu, what if players are always defending their pads and making preemptive plays to stop us from doing, for example, score pushes or, invades in the jungle? Well then, that's a different type of rotation. if they're going to play defensive in the whole game, well, there's different types of rotations to break them down. All you need to do is start showing yourself. Now, okay, because I guess we're going through a little bit of a longer rotational guide, I'm going to explain this topic, but showing yourself is meaning like we're going to walk into a lane with 50 points, and we're going to show ourselves deliberately. This is going to influence your opponent mentally. They're going to understand, hey, like, you have to also assume that your opponent's not always the quickest people in the kitchen. And so you wait there for a bit, you wait until they gather. Because they usually end up thinking, oh, okay, something is going down. And when they have committed, it's like, throwing a punch in a fight. The moment they've thrown the punch, they've committed. They can't pull it back. You can't just go, no, I'm taking that back. It's thrown. And that's when everything goes down. That's when you go and you slip to the left and boom, good night. All I'm saying. But the idea is the same. You show, they bite the bait, and the moment they bit in the bait, it's when your team should make that next play. And that's if, like, of course, you have a team that's capable of doing that, but that happens in duo and trio queue as well. You're going to have teammates who are able to capitalize off your baiting. You know that you're baiting, they don't know you're baiting. Use that to your advantage. Unite is just as much a mental game as anything else, if not a more mental game than really anything else. The mechanics in the micro are a lot more limited than the actual mental aspect of the game. So it's just like fishing, as I said. Throw out the cast, you got the bait, the moment the fish sinks in, you start reeling. Your friends in the other lane can go and score. Your friends in the other lane can set up ambushes for people reacting. Guys, like, when I'm saying that baiting goes more than just one way, you can bait, I'll continue this example. You bait the enemy team top lane because it looks like you can score. What you do is you sort of run around for a second, you disengage, and then you run a little bit into the jungle. What they don't know is you set up in the jungle. You own their territory because they've shown their manpower. They have no vision. Vision is so important because it creates ambushes. And therein lies the secret power of Pokemon Unite. Information. And that's what belies all of these rotations. Your game sense. It's your intuition. If you see the Dodrio run into the jungle, after you've been baited into the top lane, someone's going to recall and go to the bot lane thinking that you're going to go score. Someone's going to continue farming. Maybe one person chases. And that one person who bites the bait, their game sense, their intuition, maybe it makes sense. Because in that moment, they think, oh, well, everyone else is doing something. I may as well do something as well, like by keeping vision on the Dodrio. But that play in itself has been ruined because the Dodrio was thinking 3 steps ahead, thinking I'm going to purposely lead them top, I'm going to bait them into the jungle, they're going to walk into my team and instantly die, and there's going to be no hope for them because the surprise attack is way more effective than a regular attack. I'm going to ask you a million times, how much more effective it is when someone ambushes you out of the brushes in the Pokemon game. When they do that, are they more likely to take you down than if they ran at you in a straight line? Some Pokemon can run at you in a straight line and take you down, but that's most of the time related to your inability to understand how much damage they can deal, so you disrespect the actual ranges and threats that they have. But when you walk into a brush and you, oh wow, it's 4 players, that's when you actually genuinely have 0 reaction time. You haven't had time to process the threats. You can process the probability of this play. That's the real game sense, that's the real intuition, that's the true advantage. But if you can't do that in the time before you've been baited, then it's over for you. And you're going to get knocked out and you are going to go back to the home base. So when you think about the concepts like this, rotations are such a fluid thing that apply throughout all of Pokemon Unite. So now that we've basically gone through the essential basics and everything general about rotations, now that we know we can use it offensively, defensively, it's about matching the tempo and the game speed. It's about watching the game state and knowing what is the right thing to do. Let's talk about rotations regarding the Regis, because I think that's a really important thing that we can at least cover in this video. Let's bring in Registeel and let's bring in Regieleki. Yep, there we go. So with these 2 objectives, one is giving us a buff, which implies that we do extra damage, and the other one is giving us a soldier that's going to walk down the top lane. They both give about similar experience, but one gives experience to the enemy team as well. So the Regieleki gives the experience to enemy team. More often than not, players are going to seek out this Registeel because of its 20% damage buff. That's fair enough. The 20% damage buff makes a lot of sense. But then you need to understand Pokémon Unite is a game about getting advantages and making use of them. If you take a Registeel and do nothing, was there any point of doing that objective? That's some food for thought. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section. Now, whereas the Regieleki, it's always going to give the certain value of an amount of pressure on the map, because it is a physical moving object going to one of the lanes. So when we consider this, yes, Regieleki a lot of the time is the worst decision, because you're going to lose out on combat power, which is essentially the main thing in the game that you can pressure with. I want you to remember that Pokémon Unite is a game with a one-tiered lead system. It's only experience. If you were behind in experience, statistically, you are worse off in the fight. The only other lead is in Unite moves, and even them, they're so fickle, and it's the opportunity means that, yeah, we're behind in levels if you now have to hit that Unite move, and if they have Unite moves, more often than not, they're just going to kill you. So you can think about it like that, it can create a lot of issues. Now, if you have no Unite moves, they straight up should win every single fight. Now, of course, there's some mechanical differences, there's some micro gameplay, and I do enjoy that, and I think we should all appreciate when you're able to take down oppositions when you're behind in Pokemon Unite levels. Like, it's really good. It's a really talented high-end play. But a lot of the time, that's because your opponent is underestimating the strength that you can actually apply at that moment, or they're getting ambushed. One of two things, right? So, when we get this Registeel, it's another layer of advantage in a game where they're really not giving any, right? So it's a large amount of pressure on the map that to be able to force into their jungle, force into their objectives, and really push them because you can do more damage to them, even if you were in evens game state. But the Regieleki, it's a lot more interesting because now, as I said, it's giving us this walking tower, basically, walking into their team's bases and putting a lot of pressure on the map. But you're going to say, Sulu, but there's not really much pressure. We can just leave one player to defeat it. Then it's a 4 versus 5. And there's nothing worse in Pokemon Unite. Like, I would say, how many levels does one player count for? That's another question to ask in the comment section. What do you guys think? I personally think that a player is probably worth about 3 levels on a carry. Especially if they're a tank or a support. Like, this is very, very important roles. Like, you want to be level 14 as a Zoroark versus level 11s if we're going to lose our top laner or tank, it's like holding a Regieleki. And even then, that's really risky because you die by accident and now you've given everything back and your team is still stuck dealing with this objective. So you understand, the Regieleki opens up so many opportunities in Pokemon Unite. So I guess when we go back to this question about like rotations and why to do each one, we're really asking a question about what your team needs. Do you need to apply pressure in the game to create an opening despite differences in the team? Well, then maybe Regieleki is the objective for you. If you're not strong enough to battle them at the Registeel, maybe you can't do it. Maybe there's no point in you being there. But, of course, these are all theoretical. Don't go and dip on the Regi in your ranked games. More often than not, the Registeel is going to be the better play because it is safer. It is easier to do. To get value out of a Registeel, it's very simple. You go and you take it down, and then you get the buff, and then you can fight people, and you get the value. To get value out of Regieleki, you need to set up the map, you need to set up the game, and you need to have a clear-cut objective. And then there's the thought of, what if they just let it in? That's a whole nother discussion. But I'm glad I've been able to open your eyes and widen the perspective on this discussion about what Pokemon is going to be best for rotations, how to perform a rotation, and of course, one of my favorite discussions, which Regi is going to give more rotational value? Like, why should you rotate to Registeel when Regieleki's up? I've given you the short answer. Nearly always, especially when you're in an even game state, what do you want to do, guys? It's the Registeel. Really. The damage buff is going to give you the advantage. It's the same with all the other Regis. The buff itself, in a game like this where you don't get advantages for free, they're going to make a difference. But if you are losing already, think about that. You're going to have to fight over it. You're going to have to get killed again and then go for it. Maybe the Regieleki is looking more appetizing. I want you to think about that. That's a thought of discussion. I'm not recommending anything necessarily. I would say, look, more often than not, go for a Regi at the bottom. But a lot of the time, the Regi at the top can be valuable as well. It's about how you use it. Alright, just like with everything else, guys, leave a like on the video, sub to the channel, and of course, comment down below what you found most valuable about this Pokemon Unite guide and lesson. I'm really excited to be doing a lot more this year, so of course, let's keep up the thumbs, let's keep up the tempo, and I'll keep delivering beautiful, amazing Pokemon Unite content for all of you to enjoy. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.